thank you all for coming, both people that are in this room and people who are on Zoom, as far as I understand. My name is Rūdolfs Kivlenieks, and I'm going to talk about events, festivals, and climate, about strategies for sustainable event management. I hope that you will find this interesting because I think we all like events and festivals, and we already talked about the Green Book previously in the plenary session. I'm not gonna tell you what you should do or shouldn't do in events, because I feel like there is no right answer for it right now. And that's why I will also love to hear your questions and your not discussions, but your opinions on things. Because yeah, as I said, but the goal for me today is to speak about the different aspects that we have in event industry. Basically, what maybe is a sustainable event, how can we measure it, which I think is the most important part right now, which are the steps that we can take right now to make events more sustainable, and what are the next steps and what may be the difficulties along the way. A little bit about me. This is the picture from the event that I made that Laura mentioned previously, which was Swapsies. We made the event where you can come and swap clothing. That's not important right now. What's important is that I have studied in Latvian Academy of Culture and Riga Technical University. In one university, I was studying events, culture, and in the other one, I could learn more about climate and climate neutrality. I also did 2 research topics while studying there. One was about the ecological footprint of Latvian festivals. And then for my bachelor thesis, I did preconditions for sustainable development practices also in Latvian festivals. The other thing is, as you all know, I am the young ambassador, so I'm a climate activist. And currently I work for an event company, so I sort of have all these aspects in my life come together, and I can see both the arguments from the climate side and then the arguments from the event side. So that's why I think this is going to be quite interesting, because I know that at least the people in this room will be very pro-climate, and then I'm kind of in the middle of all this. But that's life. So what do you think is a sustainable event? Do you have any ideas?
So I think in the public, a sustainable event is always an event which has a neutral carbon footprint. So maybe they can set off all their emissions, what they are producing during the event. That they have solutions like what we have heard before, like for catering, like logistics, transportation, and try to be as green as possible, so that they can organize the event in accordance with the environment.
I agree with Marcus, of course, but I think that common public is often, at least in some countries, at least in Bulgaria, is confused about sustainable events. They often think if a camp is being done within nature or green park, it is already a green event. If the event is happening in open air in a green surrounding area, it's a green event. And I think it's our role to show them the difference between having an event in open space or a camp in open space and a really eco, environmental, green, sustainable, etc. event. So it's important, yeah, to make the list clear.
Would you like to? Okay. Okay. I actually have 2 definitions that I found that I would like to read to you, because that I found during my research. One is from Donald Getz, who is a researcher from festivals. He writes that he defines sustainable festivals as something that performs social, cultural, economic, and environmental functions of importance to the local community. And then the other one is one that I found from United Nations, is finding a balance between social, economic, and environmental responsibilities, bringing benefits to all stakeholders, which to me sounds a lot like the definition of sustainable development, which you could kind of say that a sustainable event is something that happens, but it doesn't put in danger the next generations. You know, we have an event, but we don't put them in a worse situation than we are in right now. But there's no real definition for a sustainable event. Some people do say that if we're having 1 or 2 green things, that we are sustainable. Even if it's happening in a forest, it doesn't matter if we leave if we leave the forest trashed. They will say, "Oh, well, this is sustainable because we are doing it in the forest." But I think it's important to actually talk about this. Not only to the public, but to the event industry, because I actually agree also with your definition about the neutrality, because we see that we have all these climate legislations and we have all these contracts and we have all these aims, but we are not achieving them as fast as we would like to. And if we look at what does it actually mean to be climate neutral, it means that we find every aspect we look into every aspect where we could cut the emissions. That also means events and festivals. So sooner or later, at least in my own thoughts, and I think maybe you will agree, is that sooner or later festivals and events are also going to come under some legislation that will say that you do have to be this amount of climate friendly. But we will also see later on what has to happen to actually for that to be possible. Yeah. So as we know, many do call themselves green and eco-friendly, but that doesn't mean that they really are eco-friendly. And I think the biggest problem right now is the lack of data. That, you know, I say, oh, I'm climate friendly, but where's the data that would actually prove that you are climate friendly? If you don't have the data, but you're just saying it, we all know that that's just greenwashing. So the thing that I usually tell event makers or event organizers is actually just the ways how you can actually calculate if you're friendly or not. But there are 2 things that we need to remember in every time when we want to calculate the sustainability of our event. One is the scale of our calculations. Do we measure the impact that the event has only when the event is actually happening? So for example, I have an event that is from 9 o'clock till 8. Do I only look at that time? Or do I also look at the build-up stage? Because festivals have 4 stages, usually events and festivals has the planning stage. Then we have what I call the build-up stage, where we build the stage. Then we have the event itself, and then we have the post-event. So what's the scale that we are actually measuring? What do you actually think should be the measurement of how big the scale should be? Everything. From the planning till the end. Okay, and then also the time frame. How far back do we actually calculate something? What I mean by this is how far back the production chain do we go? Do we look at the fact that, okay, for example, I have well, let's again take example of a stage. Do I want to build the stage from, let's say, wood? Do I look where the wood comes from, or do I look like from what forest does it come? It's kind of funny, but at the same time, you could actually do that if you would be very much into the topic. But that's something that before you start calculating, you have to make these frames of, what are the things that we are going to look at. So the first thing, how you can actually see if you are kind of sustainable or not. Of course, this isn't the best measurement, but it's just number analysis, which is very easy. The popular example of an event is saying that, well, we had 2 tons of trash last year. This year we have 1 ton of trash, so we have become more sustainable. It's a great thing to use. It's you know, easy to calculate. You just have data throughout every year and you'll compare it, but the problem is that it does not show the full picture and it does not show the fact if you are really sustainable or not. I'll give you an example. For example, so a festival has I'll take a very specific brand. There's Jägermeister alcohol, which has really heavy. They have really heavy bottles. So they had a festival has them as a sponsor. They throw the bottles just out and they say, well, you know, our glass trash is now 5 tons of 5 tons combined. And then the next year they don't have the sponsor, they have just regular glass bottles, and they say, well, we have 3 tons of trash now, so we must be more sustainable. But in the reality, they probably have the glass quantity bigger than the actual than the glass bottles they had previously. This is what I also say to event organizers, is that you can have a paid survey, which is basically, you have a company that you do surveys and events. I pay you the money, you come to my event, you do what calculations you need, you take the data from me that you also need, and you just calculate it your own way. It's an easy to use tool, because if I'm an event organizer, sometimes I don't have the time or the capacity for someone from my team to actually do the calculations. The downside is that I do have to pay someone to do this as a service. And if I also have to talk about these calculations, is the fact that if you're going to use a paid survey, you have to be prepared that you will not know the formulas that are being used to actually calculate your sustainability. And that creates problems further in the future if we want to actually compare the sustainability of different events. Then another one. I have no idea why it says "and Sustainable Development Goals." It should be UN Sustainable Goals. You've all seen these squares, right? Of the United Nations Sustainability Goals. What companies do? They pick out one or several goals that they would like to achieve in their company, and then they create their own strategy of, okay, how are we going to try and implement this in our company? You can try and do the same for your events. If we go back and look at the goals, I would say that, for example, you could try to achieve life below water, life on land. You can try to achieve climate action, clean water and sanitation. Those are usually the things that we talk about when we talk about events, at least in the industry. For example, right now, the clean water and sanitation would be very popular, of having the, how do you call them in English? Water refilling points. Again, a great tool to use, and you have the chance to learn from each other, because, as I said, there are companies who use these goals for themselves, and you can, for example, if I have a partner who's using the same UN goals, I can go and try to learn from them. The downside is that, again, we need most likely a separate teammate who would be doing these things for me, who would be making the strategy and then seeing, well, is it going according to the plan or not? And also, you could try to greenwash this as well. If you would, for example, cheat with the data and would not maybe create a strategy good enough to actually, not a good enough, but a strategy that would not make maybe achieve the goal that the UN has set out. But I would like to say that, yes, these are the UN goals, and they have their own ways how to achieve them. But especially in the beginning, and sustainability is not that big of a topic in events yet, at least not in Latvia. As a beginning, I would say that this is a pretty good way how to start to just try and see what we can do in the topic of sustainability on our events. Then the next one, triple bottom line. How many of you know this? Okay, great. So if I say something wrong, you won't know. This is something that I found on my research while doing the ecological footprint of Latvian festivals. So TBL basically takes into account 3 things, which is profit, people, and planet. Again, there's no real calculation how do you calculate which is the bottom line that you should reach. What you do is you also set out goals, and you set out goals in all 3 categories. And again, you create a strategy how to try and get them. For example, I can, in the people category, I could list out, I could set a goal that 20% of people come to our festival by bicycle. What's the strategy going to be? How am I going to get those people to actually come by bicycle? How am I going to measure it? How will I know that X amount of bicycles equals X amount of people. If something went wrong, if I do not reach it, I can try and see what I have to do better for next year. Because especially if you look at festivals, this will be a long-term thing that you will have to do. I cannot. It's almost impossible to implement a sustainable practice in your festival and expect it to work in the first year. Especially if the audience already knows the festival before, you will have to implement it the first year, gather data, look at the data and try and understand what worked and what didn't work, and then do it the next year. And no one guarantees you the fact that it's going to work the next year as well. So it is kind of a long-term thing. The great thing about triple bottom line is, as I said, it gives an insight into all three topics, but the bottom side, the downside is that it doesn't have a specific way how to calculate it. So again, if I want to greenwash, I can just lie with the data. Then there's the carbon footprint calculations. Which you gather data that you need for a calculator, and you can find these calculators on the internet, of course. And you put in the data, it then calculates how much emissions you have created, and it equals it to the CO2 emissions. It's a great tool actually to use, especially again if I'm starting out, because I can find free calculators on the internet. The downside is that the end result is sometimes unclear to the relation to sustainability. I'll give you an example. We have a festival in Latvia which in 2 days attracts 20,000 people, and it creates 256 tons of CO2. Is the festival sustainable or not? What do you think? 256 tons of CO2. And they take into account the buildup and the taking down stage as well. Yes. So you would say it's sustainable. So here's the thing, we don't know. Because there's no categories that would say that this, let's say that a festival is sustainable if it has X amount of people, X amount of days, X amount of materials used, and then if it's in these categories, it's sustainable. It's great to see how much CO2 we have emitted, but it doesn't tell us if we are sustainable or not. So my personal favorite is the ecological footprint calculations, which, as you might know, it shows us how much, how many Earths we would need if everyone would be living like us. In this case, we could try and implement it in events, saying that if everyone would be making events like you, we would need this amount of planets, which is great because if I see that I'm above one planet, I'm suddenly forgetting English. If I'm above one planet limit, I know that I'm not sustainable. The downside is that in my research, I have not yet found an ecological footprint calculation for events. It's usually only done for individual people, and it does need a set of rules for quality data. As I said before, the main thing in doing sustainability is how do we categorize events. So there are the prerequisites for quality measurements. First of all, the sustainability has to be a bigger topic in the world of events. I'll touch upon this later on as well, but the most important thing is that the event industry has to determine the factors for calculations. For me to be sustainable and for us as researchers to be able to compare data, we have to have these categories to know, to be able to compare these events, because I can't, it is not going to be correct to compare an event that has 1,000 visitors with an event that has 50,000 visitors, because we know that the one with 50,000 visitors is going to have more emissions and it's not going to be in the same number region as the one with 1,000 visitors. Maybe you have some questions up until now, or do you have any comments about the ways how you can calculate the sustainability? No? And none online? Yes.
Maybe an interesting phrase, but the best way to get sustainable events is to avoid events, isn't it? But then we are missing like a very important cultural good. But yeah, how do you deal with this thesis maybe?
I mean, sure, you know, if there would be no events, then we wouldn't have the a problem with the sustainability, but you can make the same argument for everything. Like, you know, wouldn't it be easier if we wouldn't have plastics anymore? I mean, we shouldn't have. There are other materials that we can use, but I don't think it's about, you know, if we want to be very realistic, you can make the same argument about, I don't know, people. Like, if there wouldn't be people, there wouldn't be such big climate problems. We don't want people to go extinct. That's not our goal. Our goal is for people to adapt, so and to change, and that is what has to happen in the event industry. Thank you. So what are the steps that we can take now towards sustainability at events? One is, of course, we can use different solutions to make our festival more green. The most popular one right now, I think, is the deposit glasses. We are now moving towards depository dishes as well, or edible dishes. The third one that, at least in Latvia, is becoming very popular, as I mentioned before, is the water refilling points. Trash sorting, although it's also a big problem. I don't know how it is in your countries, but for example, in Latvia, we have these different providers of trash sorting, and everyone has different ways how they sort the trash. The problem is that if I live in one city and my provider is saying that I need to throw my plastic bottle, let's say, in the blue container, and then I go to an event and they have to throw it in the yellow container, I will most likely not read the label. I will just throw it in the blue one, and you know, it's not perfect. Have you seen any great ways how to be more sustainable at events? Maybe you have some. Awesome.
So we approached one event that is told to be green, as I spoke beforehand, and they did some green steps before we started to work with them, but I really think that they don't realize that. For example, they do have compost, so they throw separately the food waste from the other trash, let's say, and they do have it, and they didn't know so much that it is one of the green steps that they are taking. During this festival, we had, besides from the brown bins for compost, we also had a separation system. We also tried to make this deposit system that you're mentioning. You have to finish it 5 minutes. If it is like this, I can give you back the microphone. So just it is what I wanted to say somehow, that sometimes the steps are clear, more or less. For example, deposit system, but then you have a problem how to implement it. And I think our role is to show how to implement it. For example, with the deposit system, the festival organizers wanted to have a deposit system about glasses, but we spoke like 3 months with the National Agency of Income, or whatever is the state institution name, so that we find a way that it happens legally, because you issue a cash receipt when you give a deposit, but then when the person comes back and give you the glass, the physical person cannot issue a deposit, a cash, so that it is legally done, and it was a big challenge how to make it with the glass deposit system, and we managed in the very last moment. But we, as you said, I really like that in the first year you make it in one festival, it cannot be really successful. It wasn't really successful. I think the successful step was that we found the legal way, but we didn't have time enough to popularize it among the festival attendees, so they didn't use that option that much, let's say. So yeah, I'm giving you the microphone back because
you have a yeah.
No, not a technical one. Yeah, it's. I'm Victoria from CEEweb, one of the organizers of these events, and yeah, I'm usually doing this for living, organizing events, which is quite challenging to make sustainable, even in Europe. But I just would like to. I don't want to talk about the specific conference we are on it, or conferences, which is another type of event like the festivals you mentioned a lot. In business world, it's another aspect, but I just would like to mention two of the aspects of our work. The one is a success I would like to share with you from my past, where I was working together. I was working for a for-profit multinational company, and it was a very interesting experience for me. I was working with another so Asian people, and because we are now also in a bubble in our European mindset, but that's another different culture. And I got a task to organize a running contest for the company employees, and I decided to do it as a zero waste event, which they never heard about, so they had no clue what is it, and we had to start from the very beginning, not using plastic cutleries and such. And then the other so after the first year of hard pushing of from my side, the second year they were expected to have this kind of event, and they were not surprised anymore, so they got used to this mindset, and this was a kind of success. And we also have to think not only about catering and venue to be sustainable, but also every single things related to the event, like in this case, the badges are in this conference are, let's say, sustainable because it's paper and can be planted, but more sustainable than a plastic one or a single-used one. So to avoid single-use things is one of the, I think, the biggest challenge. And it's not only about because of it's not in the business world, but also we have so specified regulation EU-wide regarding health. I just heard in the Qatar that someone was complaining about why the sugars was packed one by one. It's because we built a system with very strong requirements on strong regulations on health protection, and we are just in this cage. And if you would like to think a bit more natural, you need to escape from this cage and try to, I don't know how to say, but organize things more organic way. And the other thing, it's a completely different story. I just usually don't hear about anything regarding to the event organization, is the carbon footprint of the hybrid events, because it also has a lot. So what was very interesting for me when I read the report, a Hungarian report, when this COVID hits the world and everything was online, including the events, and people thought that it's even better. We are so sustainable and eco-friendly and such. We are not traveling, yeah, but we should see the other side, what the online presence impacting on the world. So whatever I'm recording today is going to a cloud or on a server and will be stored. And those server rooms will be cooled with a lot of energy. So there are always a back and forth, a pro-contra aspects of each decision we make. And it's hard, but always very nice to hear the different opinions and see what can be even do better. So this was my comment. Thank you.
And maybe to add on this, Victoria, it's always what Rudolf also has mentioned. We need to find a relation. So is it better to have 100 people traveling to one event? Or is it more sustainable to have these 100 people online? I mean, you always have a carbon footprint, but then you need to find out the relation. It's not about avoiding like or having this zero footprint. We can't. We are human. We are affecting our globe, but at least the less as possible. And also with the nutrition, on the one side we have strict regulations about our health system, but on the other side, I also claim there is a lack of regulation for fighting food waste. So why don't we have regulations there, which are saying that we can do this, this, and this with the food when it's not used during the event and stuff like that, so that we can that we don't need to throw it away because we can use it for a different purpose, maybe.
Thank you for your answers, and I actually do agree also with the fact that you have, as I mentioned before, you have to look at the data. Which is better? Do people come, to Brussels and we have this conference for everyone on site, or do a hybrid event? Then again, as an organizer, I would probably love if there would be, I don't know, 10 or 100 people on site, but then 1,000 or 10,000 people on online, and especially about this type of a topic, which is, climate action. One thing though that I have found, which is about compensating your footprints, is that some festivals or events are giving the opportunity to people to actually pay a little bit extra to do some type of a carbon compensating. For example, there's a festival in Belgium which is restoring a forest. A part of if you buy a ticket for them from them, then you can pay a little bit more extra to decide how many trees do you want to help to plant in this forest, and that's kind of like trying to compensate this emitted CO2. Of course, we know that tree planting is maybe not the best way how to do it, because it's going to take a couple of years, but that's just one example how to do it. You can also actually raise awareness about things. For example, there's a festival in Estonia, Island Sound, and together with artist Ines, I forgot her last name. Let me quickly check. Ines Velido. They are creating these art pieces from cigarette butts. So what they are doing is they are collecting throughout the festival. They are giving out these remote. They are giving these remote collectors where if I smoke, I don't throw the cigarette butt on the ground. I collect it, and then I take it to the place where they all collect it together. And then during the festival, they're making these art pieces, which are then covered with epoxide or something, so that the chemicals do not spread out into the earth. But this is also one thing that we can do throughout the festivals. We can try to create awareness about, the trash that we are actually creating. Great thing as well, if we speak about this specific one, the artist is also, she owns a company that does recycling of cigarette butts. So she's kind of into this, more than other people. So the steps that we need to take and the problems along the way. One thing that we already touched upon is the categorizing of events. If we want to compare the data, if we want to gather data, and if we want to say this festival or event is sustainable, we have to categorize them by different aspects. One aspect could be the amount of people that comes to your event. Then again, you know, maybe you should look at how much things have I built up during my event, or how much things I have bought, or how much things I have produced. There's no real answer to this, how it should be categorized. One thing I know for sure that I can tell you is that usually, not usually, but the best way how to categorize this would be for event organizers and for climate people to actually come together. Because the event industry is very complex in itself, as I know a lot of things in life are. Just to share this knowledge from each other and then try to see, okay, maybe this is the way how we can try to categorize events. The other thing is about the inner and outside motivation. Why do I want to be sustainable? In my research, if we look, for example, there's a great site that you can go on, which is called The Greener Future. Yes, of course. Someone asked if they can come in. They can, for the ones who are listening on Zoom. There's a website called A Greener Future. It used to be called A Greener Festival Awards. And the way how I did my research was I used the webpage to contact sustainable events and festivals to see what is the motivation. I thought that maybe somewhere in West Europe there would be legislation that would say, hey, you need to be sustainable. Everyone who has, well, not everyone, but most of the festivals that have won awards are being sustainable from their inner motivation, which means that either I care about the future, or I know that I'm, you know, this is the way how to go. Interesting thing was, somehow I got to interview some festivals that were happening on an island, and the fact that you have a physical border that you can affect. So I have an island, I have my own kind of territory that I can, you know, see what changes and what doesn't change. It helps people to be more sustainable and to want to be sustainable, because they know this is my area that I can actually affect and I want to take care of it. But we do need the outside motivation, which I would say is legislation that would say that this is the way how you should move forward within the festivals. One thing as an example I can give you, which is already happening in Tallinn and will soon be happening in Riga, which is in Latvia, is the obligation to have deposit cups in outside events and outside bars, which would of course cut down the plastic. As an event organizer, my argument, not against it, but one thing that we talked about with the city council was, if an event is happening outside, you probably also have these small shops where I can go and buy some coffee or some drinks and something like that, is the fact that if I'm organizing an event and if someone is going to this small coffee shop and buying a coffee in the plastic or the paper cup, which is not really paper, but you know, it's a mix of everything, do I count it as my own festival trash, or is it the city's trash? Basically, the point being, should the legislation then not also be appointed to everyone in the area who could be using plastic cups? Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, what do you think? Because the biggest reason why it's not happening is the lobbying from, you know, bigger companies. In the event industry, it's awesome, but it's not as big as, for example, fuel station companies, which will say that, oh, well, you know, we're not going to do this, or coffee shop companies, which, you know, they say that they won't do it. And the third thing I would say is to promote the discourse of sustainability in the event industry. One thing is we can talk about what are the benefits of being sustainable, which of course one thing is that people appreciate it more. It can be cost saving. It can also be more costly, which is the downside. I'll quickly look into my notes about what was the other upsides of it can give you a stronger partnership or stronger connections with your partners, especially if they are also on the path of sustainability. Quickly to mention the downsides of being sustainable that I have heard from other organizers is that yes, it is more expensive right now. You need more time, and I think this is a problem that is not only it's not only the problem of events that something costs more and is more time costly. It's the fact that we live in a fast-paced world. We just want everything now and on the spot. And one downside that people mentioned was that they are feeling this growing pressure from the public to see well, what's going to be the next step that you do, which is going to be sustainable. As a climate activist, it's great to see that you become more sustainable and that you're on the path of that. As an organizer, sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to do that. To give you another example would be that some event organizers want to be more sustainable. They want to replace regular diesel with eco diesel, so the eco fuel. The problem is, at least in Latvia, can you get the eco diesel that easily? And if I have to transport it for 200 kilometers then back, is it going to be again more sustainable or not? I have a question actually to you about what do you think about the legislation? What should be like? Should it happen? Should it not happen? And if it should, how it should happen? Like, what would be maybe the specifics that you would want to see in events to change there? Because we know that plastic waste is a big problem, but it's sort of happening step by step through other legislations. For example, with the ban of single-use plastic in some spaces, and then with the depository cups and cutlery, right? That's the name. Maybe you have some ideas what else should be done with legislation that should change in events and festivals. Because you are the climate experts, you know that what you see is bad.
I mean, you mentioned already lots of good things, and I think one of the main issues is that we lack data always, and also the big events like the Olympic Games and World Championships and any sports, stuff like that, they always in advance need to have like a sustainability strategy, but it's hard to control whether the event was sustainable afterwards or not. So sometimes it's also more about the event. So the environmental part and the sustainable part is like only like a side argument, and legislation should focus more on the events to be more sustainable. So it must become like really a must do within an event planning. So we need guidance, we need discussions, what you have said as well. And we also need like rules that every event from, don't know, 500,000 participants and upwards needs to have a sustainability strategy with this guidance, etc., so that we really can move on with sustainable events and that no other events can take place any longer.
Okay, awesome. Quickly to answer to your comment, and it actually creates more workspaces as well, to be a climate specialist in events. One thing that, again, doing my research, I asked people, in Latvia, if you want to have bigger buildings and events, you have to go to this city council department, which is responsible for builds and whatnot. It could be that in the future we could see maybe the same for sustainability. Maybe yes, maybe no, who knows? We'll see. It would be actually great because, if it would be as a consultant, as an expert that I could go to, I would show my plan about being sustainable and then someone could comment on it. It would be a nice way how to do it, because, especially as an organizer. So yeah, if we have 4 minutes left, maybe you have some last questions or comments, remarks. Maybe you disagreed with something, or feel free to.
Maybe just one question about your research, actually, and like in how many countries and how many festivals you actually analyzed.
Now comes the bad part. It was the qualitative research. I don't know if it's the right name in English. I did interviews in my first year. It was only like, I think, 3 or 5 festivals. Because the rule was that they have to be sustainable. Not that easy to find sustainable festivals in Latvia. And then during the bachelor degree research, as I said, I used a Greener Future website. There's, I think, European awards for green festivals. I reached out to about 15, 20 festivals, I think. Half of them did not respond. Then I think another half, which was actually really interesting, said that they are tired of speaking about sustainability. They sent me web pages of their own done research or what they are doing in terms of sustainability. And then in the end, at the bachelor, I got 5 or 6 interviews with it was, I think, 5 festivals and 1 marketing agency, which are creating events, but they are creating now sustainable events. So it's not a lot. It's not a lot of interviews, but again, there's not a lot of festivals that I can say are really sustainable. That's why I had to use these other companies or organizations that are giving out awards for something, because they're actually doing the calculations, and then the amount is the amount that there is. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, so thank you very much for the very interesting data, by the way. And yeah, in the end, to underline this again, maybe, I think more and more event organizers are willing to be more sustainable and to create green events. But as with many other parts of our society, it's a problem or the issue with our politicians. What we have heard previously, we meet and meet and meet and meet and we talk about it. We have agreement of Paris, of Rio and Barcelona and what else where they have met. But the carbon emissions are racing and racing and racing. So when do we start to take action and to stop to be not sustainable? So that's the main failure, I think. So, and that's also the outside motivation. So we need to change our politics really now in the completely other direction, that we can save our planet and to be more sustainable.
I totally agree with you, and it's it's a matter of not only changing it in terms of events, but in general. So I'm going to say a big thank you to everyone who joined here on site and everyone who joined on Zoom. Hope you found out something new, and thank you for your comments. And then wish you a successful rest of the day. Thank you.